Alright, so this is my recent version from the tutorial. So to keep things simple though, now just for the baking and so forth, I'm just going to ignore these additional objects. If I wanted to try to bake those down, I would have to do the baking. We could try to bake it in Maya and so forth, where it's a world space bake, right? So we just export all those objects to Maya and experiment with the the bake there.
Not benefit from merging them to the other to the head and then just take it all down or like bake it all together?
Yeah, so there are several ways to do it. I could also merge it down to one single Dynamesh, for instance, and then retopologize everything. And yeah, there's ways to do it, but it's just to keep it a bit simple right now. Let's just have all the detail in this one mesh. So we avoid all those additional complications. So I would probably like to have more details here, but this will suffice for me. Alright, so this is where we're at. So we have some sort of high poly version. That's what you have in front of you. And you press Shift F, you can see the wireframe. And so I think also for me here, if I go Shift D, and I go down to the lowest level and press Shift F, the wireframe or the topology here is going to be less than optimal, obviously, because I just took the demo head base and started sculpting. And let me hide the eyes and things here. So additional subtools, I can see the topology. Yeah, so see in here, it's kind of wacky. So of course, that's to be expected. When I just start sculpting, the base mesh is going to be distorted. Okay, so that's also going to be, to varying degrees, also an issue for you, depending on how far you deviated from that original model, right? But of course, what we haven't really talked about at all is the whole Dynamesh sculpting, which is designed for that purpose, so that you can just keep sculpting. Hopefully we'll have a bit of time to cover that tomorrow, probably. But once you essentially get what we're going to do now, you will understand the workflow that would be involved also with a Dynamesh sculpt, because you would be looking at some high poly sculpt, and then you would need to both make topology and UVs for it. So essentially what you care about here is the high detail that you have there. That's all you care about at this point in the sculpt, right? So that's what we're trying to salvage and export as a normal map, or bake as a normal map, down to the final mesh and the final UVs. Okay. All right. So in ZBrush, as was alluded to here, we have something called C remesher. So I just make a duplicate. So I duplicate this, a duplicate of the subtool, so I can work on this copy. And let's just quickly see what the C remesher is all about. So that's under Geometry. And just go down, a bit down, you will find something called C remesher. So this is an automatic remesher. It generates topology automatically. And essentially, this is so quick, so you can just keep trying it. I think there's also an alternate algorithm. If you press Alt and click, it will do an alternate algorithm. So this is kind of ZBrush, is a bit strange sometimes, but like there's two different algorithms, and depending on your mesh, whichever one might work better. You can essentially, this is so quick. That's what I'm saying. So just try it, see what you get. This target poly count is also a bit weird. I think this is in thousands, so this number is like kind of estimate that you would get a mesh around 5,000 polys. It's a bit strange. We can also use polypaint. If you press Control. So in the standard brush, if you go to BST, actually, let's not get too carried away with this one. We can cover this later. But we can press RGB on the standard brush, not CAD. So I'm turning off CAD altogether. Now the standard brush is just paint. So in ZBrush we also have polypaint. Now when I start painting, I can select, choose a color. Select, what is the color to actually... If you press Control over the Use Polypaint option, ZBrush will give us a little hint. So it says to paint, la 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 la. Okay, so pure red specifies a higher polygon density, and pure blue means a lower polygon density. So this is pretty interesting because it means that we can have more polys in areas that you might want more polys. So if you have, but this is not perhaps so useful just for a face, but if you have a full body character, this is extremely useful because you do want more polys in the face and less on the body. Then, so yeah, like it says, select red. I'm now in the standard brush. I'm in RGB mode, and I can start painting. And when I start painting, you'll see, that looks weird, but I just go like this. There we go. So when I paint red, that will then attract, or it will kind of make a higher polygonal density there. Anyways, but that's only if that option is enabled here. Use polypaint. Okay. All right. So let's just try it. So press C remeasure. It's gonna do the calculation.
My eyes go red.
What happened?
Trying to like select the color to use the thingy.
Yeah.
And my eyes was not instant red.
What instant red?
Eyes.
Oh, the eye. Yeah. So what happens when you select a color? Is that it will also just fill all the objects which do not have any polypaint information. But it will not fill them permanently. It's just a preview. Right? So when you change the color, you will see that everything gets that color, but it's just temporarily because they don't have any polypaint information assigned. You can also, if you just want to fill an object with a certain color, you can go here to the color menu and click Fill Object. Okay. Anyways, so Shift F. So this is my newly created topology. But this is way too dense, right? I want now to generate a low poly version. So this is way too dense. I'm just going to ignore this use polypaint feature, and I'm going to run the algorithm again. Yeah, so all of your detail will disappear now. So that's, you need to be working on a copy. Yeah. So what we'll do eventually is that first now we'll make the topology, we'll make the UVs, and then in the end we'll project the details back down to our newly created mesh. Okay, so this is getting somewhere. I'll lower it a bit. So maybe press 3, run it again. That's a bit too much. Maybe 4. Yeah.
Yours is quite
complicated. Yeah. The more complicated your kind of meshes, it will take longer to analyze all the curvature.
Do you want to try to keep most of the face shape?
Yeah. So let me try to run it on that original though. I'll make a copy again. You know, this is just an automated process, so we do have also an additional thing that we can do. Where we can use we do have something called C remeasure guide curve. So that's a brush. So if we go to B, the C remeasure guides. So you just select that as a brush, the Series Measure Guide brush. It's actually the last brush on the brush palette. And then let's say I want, yeah, so you all have seen, animation-friendly topology. You have radial topology around the eye sockets and radial topology around the mouth socket. And then there's variations. I mean, this is very simply put, but yeah. Some people also like to really clearly indicate this nasolabial fold kind of going down here. Yeah, let's not get into a big discussion on topology. As I said, if you want animation-friendly topology, this will involve more work, and you will probably need to spend a lot of time doing manual retopo in Maya. So let's also cover that just briefly. How would you go about doing that? But let's get this out of here. Series Measure first. I could here. Let's say I want to just indicate that. Okay, I want a radial topology here. This is using the Series Measure guide curve. And again, since the algorithm is so quick, the best approach is to just try it. I don't know, like what would be like the perfect. I think you don't have to really put too many of these guide curves. Sometimes you don't need too many. And I think that's it. I don't think you need to press anything here. It will use those. Is it working for you? Yeah. So if you make the guide curves, you press Series Measure, and there it did it. So if I look in here, at least I see I have more topology in the eye socket now. There's more polys there.
Kind of messed up my vitro, but I kind of like it. You see what happened? Yeah. It's kind of cool. Or it takes it down, then you take the high thing back onto the ship there. Okay, this is very cool.
So I think this may be a little dense still for me. I'm gonna undo that. I'm gonna try one more time. Maybe do a 4.
It really breaks my hands.
But you see how quick this is?
Yeah. Well, well, for this one.
Not for that.
You see, it kind of messed up the screen here. What would it do to the topology so the ear was cramped.
So this is your original, right?
No.
Oh, you already reprojected it?
Yeah.
Oh, you're ahead of the game.
But I like how it looks.
Oh, cool. So you already reprojected. Excellent, excellent. So that's the whole point. If you're happy with the result when you reproject back down, that's good. Because that's what you need to try to do. Alright, so see if I'm getting somewhere here. I'm going to try one more time. I will do a target poly count of 3, and this time I have those Series Measure guide curves, which should help to kind of retain that curvature around the eyes and around the mouth. So this is re-topologizing. But we could do this to anything. It could be a rock or whatever. So whatever kind of high poly mesh you have there, the beauty of this approach is that first you can concentrate on the content, and then you can concentrate on getting the perfect topology, and for your desired poly count specifications. All right, so it's getting lower. Yeah, now I'm really kind of getting somewhere. So this is not perfect. This is not perfect animation-friendly topology. Here, I would want a continuous kind of edge loop going around. So one of the things that we sometimes find in less than optimal topologies that you would have spirals, for instance. So you could have like spirals, and so we do want continuous edge loops. But if you're doing a presentation render, which in this case I am, and you know, for this course, you don't need to worry about having perfect animation-friendly topology. If you want to do that as a challenge, of course, you can. All right. All right, so this is, I'm going to be happy with this. I'm going to save this. Remember to save often and do up version, save iterations.
Oh yeah, you have to, well, so the tool is visible. It's not the tool you have actively selected, so you can click the eye on that one. So this is the one you're in the eyes, you just flip them down a little bit. In a spike.
That's interesting.
You could have them legal and kept it, but.
All right. So, yeah. Let me just show you very quickly how you would go about doing this manually. I'm not going to do it, but we would export the high poly mesh. So, head, high, there. And in Maya, we can make the object live and then use the quad draw tool and literally just start drawing out topology. That's what you did? That's what you did in Maya? Quad draw? Eventually, yeah. The quad draw tool. So I'll show that. I just get this OBJ out of here. Yes. So symmetry was on, or? No. That's interesting.
Okay. Can you stop the scenes in the protected area, please?
Let's see. This is the wrong. Yeah, so I exported the high poly version with some million polys. I forget how many. And then I'll put it in here. So this is, you wouldn't have to do this, but I'm just showing you how you would go about it if you were to try to attempt to do a manual retopology. Hmm? No, I'm showing you what you could do if you wanted to. This would be an alternative to using the C-remesher, or you could do a bit both. But here, essentially, yeah, you'll kind of get it. I'm just getting it in Maya, and then we're going to be able to literally just start painting polys on top of the mesh. If Maya is able to load it, let's see. Yeah. It did. How much? Yeah, that's not too much. Here we go. There it is. Like, alright, so you might not need actually to export the highest level in order for you to be able to do, which in my case, yeah, I'm also actually, I'm going to export not the highest one, because everything's going to be there, right? I don't really need all the tiny details to do the retopology. So let me export. My highest was around 3 million something. But, you know, I can see everything here. It's just that I don't see all the little pores and all the little detail. But I don't need that to do the retopology. So this is a 200,000 one. Let me export that. I can call it 200K. Oh, one other thing is that if you have a lot of poly groups, yeah, essentially we don't need a lot of poly groups now. So if you press Shift F, if you see a lot of different colors, just go down to poly groups and click auto groups so that you should see one solid color. when you press Shift F. Then you can export the OBJ, and now I have 200,000 polys. Let me just delete this guy out of here again. Yep. Yep. I might have to force quit this. Just press auto groups. Just make sure that we have one solid poly group. No. Alright, so alright. Oh, in the delivery, yeah, ice and everything, yeah, it's fine. But for the retopo, you just need that one mesh. I'm just showing right now. We will be exporting the low poly one to do the UVs, but now I'm showing something else, just in case you want to try it. So export like a medium res version to Maya, and we're gonna try to do manual retopo. I'm just mentioning this as in case you want to try it. You do not have to do this. So here we have the mesh, 200,000. I will press the magnet. Yes. Now, this is live. So see, I can no longer select it. But this means that if I now start doing things, I can snap stuff to the mesh. And here under Mesh Tools, we have something called Quad Draw. And I can literally just start drawing out vertices. Quad Draw under Mesh Tools. So I'm drawing out vertices, and these are snapping now to the mesh, which is live. And then I can shift click to generate polys. So the way to approach this, and this might seem crazy, but it's doable. So what you want to do is you want to start out kind of with the inner loop. Okay, so I'm establishing this radial topology. So I know that, okay, I'm going to have this radial thing. And I can also hold, Control to add additional edge loops. Because now I've established this path, this face path. So I'm establishing the topology. But I want to keep this light. I don't want to do... I can always add more polys, right? That's very easy to do. But if you add too many points here initially, you're just making this process a lot more difficult than it needs to be. So although it might seem like a crazy amount of work, it is doable to attempt to do a manual retopo. And probably this is something that you would have to do if you're working on an animation project or something and you want animation-friendly topology. And then I could start down here. Let's say I want to have... It's the same thing. I'm establishing that initial radial topology down here. Holding Shift. So if it's not perfect, I can always add. Oops. What's that? Yeah, so this would be an alternative to generating this low poly mesh. So currently, all I have essentially, for Shift I to isolate, this is what I have. This is my low poly mesh. So I would just keep building this out. And that's all you're doing. Yeah, this is perfect for retopology. Yeah, I mean, there's no rules. You can do anything, yeah.
With models running with animation in mind from the beginning? Yes. For a human character we did last week, I spent hours making just this face in my head. Even though that it's this big on screen and doesn't have any animation on it, still wanted to learn how to do faces the proper way for animation.
Yeah, but it's not wasted. I mean, then you know very well animation-friendly topology. So it's a worthwhile exercise to build out a human head, modeling, where it's not wasted.
Also attempted to do like a bust of myself.
Yeah.
For reference imaging with just doing planes.
Yep. So I would say, it used to be kind of this workflow, like back in the day, like maybe 15 years ago, where you would have very kind of defined side like orthographic concept art of like side view, front view, and then you just carefully build it out in polys, and then if you wanted to add additional detail, then you would go to something like ZBrush or Mudbox or whatever. But now, essentially the whole character pipeline is turned on its head. So you start off with the content, the artwork, and then because now you don't really even need a fleshed out 2D concept, you could do 3D sculpting, conceptual sculpting. And then when you have the artwork settled and kind of locked, yes, this is what we're going for, then it's much easier to generate perfect topology for that.
Something about the art of retopologizing that's like getting people that are good at that is way more useful now than it used to be.
Yeah.
You have artists doing it in ZBrush with like just the look of it in mind, or like
because everything is defined. Like all the curvature is defined, and depending on your production environment. But I would say it's kind of a part of. I think everyone should know how to do this. Like it keeps getting much more available. It's like so. Yeah, and this is it. So it seems tedious, and it is, of course. But you would flesh this out and probably have some references to the kind of topology you're after, and then keep building. And then eventually you would end up with a low poly mesh that you would export back as an OBJ. Just go export, and we get that OBJ out of here. That would be our new low poly mesh. We would make UVs for it, and then bring it back into here, reproject the details down. So yeah, so I'm gonna leave it at that for you to experiment with the quad draw tool if you want to. So all I did was import. You can do this with any mesh. You select the mesh, you click the magnet to make it live, and then in my case I use the quad draw tool. So I used to use another software called TopoGun to do retopologizing, which allowed me to do the same thing. But now I prefer Maya for this. So just try it out. Here I can keep adding. Make vertices, hold shift to make those polys, and then I can also hold shift if I want to smooth out. And everything is sticking to the underlying mesh. So it's beautiful. And this is not only for characters. So, whatever you're doing here, whatever it is that you have underneath here in world space, and you say, let me try to build a mesh for that, and then I can bake a normal map, and you can have a very low poly object be as detailed as you want, right?
It is very difficult to use
Yeah, for scans. So usually you would clean up the scans a bit in ZBrush, get rid of all the junk. So once you understand these processes, it kind of liberates you a lot, because you kind of see these solutions to things you could do. So that's what I hope you kind of you're getting at. So, all right. But in our case, so we did an automatic thing here. So whatever you end up doing, you have some low poly final mesh. And now we need to make UVs for it.
So UV the low poly one?
Yeah, so we'll make UVs for the low poly one. So essentially the high poly, all that matters is the sculpted detail. Nothing else matters. The topology doesn't matter. It doesn't need to have UVs. Actually, that's not the one. Let's see. I think this is the one I did retopologize. Yeah. All right. So then I would need to reproject. So I'm gonna export this OBJ. I'm gonna make UVs for it in Hedis UV layout. If you wanted to explore this UV master, I've been saying it is very good. I just don't happen to know it very well. But you can enable control painting. You can have, like, as we did with the C remesher, you can make poly paint. I think it's blue to attract seams and red to protect from seams. Yeah. Yeah. So. But yeah. So I will export this. So the head low.
I could only have one position. But that's yours. Alright, I added.
And I'll get busy UV mapping it.
So export the low one as OBJ?
Yeah, so export the final low poly as an OBJ. So you see, it's way denser actually than I need it to be, but we'll see if I can make this work. So you go click load, and you have to navigate in this old school thing. Alright, so if you do see some errors and things when you try to make it symmetrical, it might just mean that you don't have a perfectly symmetrical mesh, and that's fine. So I can press C to cut. I'm going to start. Yeah, I'll just start cutting off this face mask. Press C. C to start marking the edge to cut, and then backspace to deselect the edges again. C for cut.
Oh.
Yep. And then you gotta click backspace to demark the edges that you do not want to have selected. Then once you get that continuous cut, you can press enter, and Hedis will make the cut. We'll have a look. We'll have a look, yeah. But here, I made this entire piece off, like I cut it off, and I can hold spacebar, middle mouse button, and keep working like this. So here I can cut this. Yeah, your topology might vary a lot. And this is not a perfect topology, like we said. So I just have to make this work. So here, I deselect these regions that I don't need. Press enter, spacebar, middle mouse button. I can drag it up here. That's because it's the symmetry here is enabled. Then I only need to do it at one side. And then here for the interior of the eye socket, I'm just gonna do a simple cut here.
When your lines move to enter.
Yep. So here, this is an unfortunate event here in my topology. You see that it creates this kind of spiral that I was talking about. This is not something we ideally want in animation-friendly topology. But again, this is not perfect topology. So I just have to make this work. So I go backspace to deselect, demark, spacebar, middle mouse button. You can drag those parts apart. Yeah, so here I just took the entire eye socket out. And then I'm just gonna cut that in half or something. And again, I have a lot of issues with the spirals everywhere. Just because my topology is not perfect. But I have to make it work. Yes. Spacebar, middle mouse button to move the pieces apart. Yeah, I just did the eye sockets, cut them in half. There you go. Alright, and then we can then drop these pieces down to UV mode. Just press D to drop. So now I can go press number 1. 1, 2, 1, 2. You might have to re-import it, I think. So for both for the mouth cavity and the eye cavities, I just cut them off and flatten them. Just cut them in half, basically. Yes. Color some shadow.
Det var liksom, när jag filmade så bökade det ner, det var jag här.
Ja, det har bare med å gjøre at vi har en veldig funky topologi.
Vad tror du?
Det er ok. Så lenge du får det delt opp. Yeah, I cut it this way instead. It seems you're having fun. Yeah, these will just be individual UV islands, UV shells. So in UV mode, I press 1 to go to UV mode, so D to drop these pieces down to UV mode, and then press 1, 2, you can toggle between these two modes. So Shift F to flatten, and spacebar gonna stop that operation. So this is too funky, so I would have to make some additional cuts. Again, this is just very quick and dirty. We don't have perfect topology, so there will be some very strange cuts. I'm sorry? Press 1. So here in number 2, you press D to drop these pieces down to UV mode. Then press 1 and 2, you can toggle between these two modes. Shift D if you want to undrop. Shift F. So Shift F to flatten. There's a, if you go to About UV Layout and let's see. Yeah, if you do the View User Guide, there's a quick start. This is basically these are the main buttons. It's a very powerful program for UVs. There's a lot under the hood. It is a bit retro. We have to appreciate it. So if you do have a symmetrical model, you can press S and it will apply that symmetrically. So I can keep making changes over here. So here I can go really close. I can hold Control to move individual UVs. Control and what is it? Middle mouse button. And then if I want to have this applied over here, press S. Boom. My mouth cavity is this guy. I just divided it in 4. Drop, drop, drop. Shift F. Boom. Spacebar. S. Symmetry. And then spacebar, middle mouse button. I can move UVs around here. Press S. Yay. Shift F. Press S. So we really need to make sure we don't have overlapping UVs. If I go really close here, I can hold Control, middle mouse button, move individual UVs. Press S. The issue with overlapping UVs is not only an aesthetic one, it can actually cause our bakes to fail. And also for that nose cavity, I'm gonna do the same thing. It's all the same. C, and once you have everything cut off, you can hold spacebar, middle mouse button to move these pieces around. If you find that it's still stuck, you haven't cut everything off. So what I'm doing for all these cavities, I'm just literally cutting them off and then cutting them in half. One thing that we're really struggling with over and over again is this poor topology. So obviously, this would be more rewarding if we had taken the time to do manual retopo and we had beautiful edge loops. Because then once I click here one time, I would not get this incomplete loop. I would have a complete loop, and the UVs and everything would just work much more harmoniously. So of course, I do recommend if you have the time and you really want to make a beautiful topology, you would need to take the time to do that manually like I showed you in Maya. It is rewarding, and then once you get to this stage, everything will kind of work more naturally. Now it all seems a bit messy because it is messy, but now all that we want is to have UVs which at least would not be overlapping and which would have minimal distortion, just for the bake to work. Actually, I did have a complete loop there. So not all spirals, it seemed. That's good. So there's the little nose cavity. And again, I'm going to cut this in half. D to drop. Let me now I'm going to drop this entire face. See, Shift F, then spacebar. Not perfect. So the colors obviously indicate the level of distortion. So here is quite a bit. I can manually tweak this. So I can hold Shift. That will give me kind of a smooth tool or control for individual UVs. And again, S to do that symmetrically. And this is completely... I cannot have this. I cannot have overlapping UVs. So I would have to fix this. Alright. So I can press number 3 and press, what is it, T to check for UV distortion. So you see, this is, it's not bad. It's pretty good. If we had a lot of distortion, you would see those little checkers. We have a little bit here, but not bad. This is the nose cavity. So I'm holding spacebar, what is it, right mouse button I can just rotate, middle mouse button I can move it around, left mouse button I would scale it, but I don't want to scale any of these now because I'm maintaining a very even pixel density.
Okay. Let's cut out my mouth. You know, I have the like download.
Cut out your mouth. The cavity.
Like
Right. No, it all depends. If you can get like an even unwrap, you know, it's always beneficial to have it together if you can. It's not such a big deal. If you can avoid placing seams directly like in the middle of the face, you know.
How are you talking?
A Shift F. For our purposes now, all we want is like to attempt to do a bake. So, although we are a little bit concerned with the seams, we don't have to be too concerned. What happened? What happened? Yeah, no good. A lot of distortion. So when you do the unwrap, yeah, obviously you want to see as little as possible of the red and blue. So then you would just go in and make some more cuts. Yeah, so for all those cavities, I just separated them, then cut them in half, flattened. Yeah, like literally, this is my, I think this is my mouth cavity, I don't remember. Like I just cut it and literally cut it out, the entire cavity, and then... Hmm? Really? Oh, that's good. Control F. Hmm. I do Shift F, right? Shift F to... Control F. Oh.
How do you make a bad one and see if it happens?
Yeah.
Maybe Shift F is the same thing?
Maybe.
Oh yeah, essentially.
It's the same?
Yes.
Yeah, so UVs are always fun.
But like general practices for you, do you want it as many individual shows or?
Well, if we were to work more with this, I would have more optimal topology to begin with. And then, yeah, if you can at least have a large UV shell for like the face. But, you know, these days we can get away with more seams than used to be the case.
Yeah. Cool. So you're trying to stay away from having just one big UV shell for what the face, I guess.
If we were to go in and really work with UVs, yeah, we could work our way up to one big a nice UV shell.
About optimal.
Well, some people would want to strive for that. It kind of depends, like where you're going with it.
Yeah.
Like technically, you can get away with a lot these days.
Yeah.
Because everything is kind of in 3D space when we're baking.
Yeah.
So so will the textures be.
Yeah.
So for my purposes, like if I can avoid having seams smack in the middle of the face, I would avoid that. But I'd just be a little bit more lenient with it. Like, yeah. But it would just be a lot more work. We could go in here after the fact and weld edges back together and keep flattening. And there's more tools in here, like to.
There's also having it depends on like the character. Let's say you have a hat and you can just have all the seams in the top.
Oh yeah, totally, yeah. So I would say it does depend a lot, This is an automatic mapping. So I just selected the object, go to UV, click automatic. So it will just spread out everywhere and you will get a lot of these tiny UV shells everywhere. Not optimal, but I have UVs, technically speaking. And this is the result of the normal map applied on this mesh. So I take the low poly into Maya, do the automatic mapping, export again as an OBJ, export selection as OBJ, and then we'll go to ZBrush, and this is where we'll do the projection again. Actually, so let me just go through this again with you. So I'll open my. So you just need to open your high poly sculpt wherever you have that. So this is my high poly, and I go down. Actually, I can use the C plugin multi-append under the subtool master. So C plugin, subtool master, multi-append. So I'm in my subtool menu. Multi-append. Yeah. So and this is gonna do this automatically. So I'm on this currently selected C tool. I'm in the subtool palette. This is my high poly sculpt. And here I'm going to be able to go to C plugin, multi-append. It's just going to take me right. I can navigate to where I have that OBJ. Here, head, low. Select the OBJ. Actually, I called it auto UV. Yeah. What's that? Yeah, that's an issue. What should I repeat? Okay. Alright. So I'm in ZBrush. I have my high poly sculpt. I go to C plugin under the subtool master, multi-append, and I find the OBJ that I made the UVs for in Maya. In this case, I exported one just with automatic mapping. I click open, and ZBrush will automatically place that in here in the subtool folder. So you see now I have this one here. It's called head low auto UV. And now we're going to do the same thing we did last time with the sci-fi container example where we projected the details, the high poly details back and down to this new object, right? Now we have a new object with new topology and new UVs. Oh, maybe I should. So that should be placed at the bottom. You see? So you place the retopper one with the UVs at the bottom. The high poly should be above it. And then we do need to add a sufficient amount of subdivision levels to the retopologized version, right? So Control D. No, I'm currently just adding subdivision levels to the one I imported, which was the one with automatic mapping, the retopologized one. So I'm subdividing that one to a sufficient amount. So yeah, so now I have 2.6 million, so roughly 3 million is probably going to be enough. Well, depending on, I have 3.3 million on that one, but it's probably going to be enough. It's just because now we have a totally different topology as a starting point, right? Both of them visible. So the high poly at the top, low poly now just added subdivision levels. So if I hide the top one, you should see that this is my new low poly just subdivided. Then I can go project all, and depending on your kind of specific levels of details, like if you have very large details kind of extending out, you might have to increase this distance. This is a search distance. Typically you don't have to increase it too much, so maybe like 0.09. That's usually, in my experience, I can usually capture everything. In this case, I can leave it as is, because I can see that there's not really a great, like the details are kind of small. And then project all.
Are you on the high poly one?
No, I have the bottom one selected. So the one I'm projecting to should be at the bottom, the retopper one. They both need to be in a sufficient subdivision level. So the high poly one on top with the highest subdivision level, and I add sufficient subdivisions to the retopologized version. Yeah, just like enough. Yeah, roughly the same. Doesn't need to be exact. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so have the bottom one selected. Both of them are visible in the subtool palette. Then click project all. And it will reproject the details back down to the new mesh. So this is the same thing we did last time with the sci-fi container example. Alright, so there we go. So now all the details from the original sculpt is now baked back down. You can see now all those details. They're now applied to the new retopologized mesh that also has UVs. In this case, it has automatic UVs, but okay, that's fine. Yep. So then the next step would be to try to bake a normal map. We're going to use the multi-map exporter again. So it's not uncommon that these projections will cause errors. You might see that you get some spikes here and there, and things don't seem to work. That didn't happen here, so I'm not able to show you that. But a workaround to that could be to store a morph target. Remember the morph brush? So you could store a morph target before you do the projection, and then use the morph brush to morph back to the previous version of the model before you do the projection. That's clever. And also you could do gradually. Okay, so don't like go to the top subdivision level at once. Just the this one can be in its maximum level, like the one you're sampling from, but then don't add maximum level of subdivision levels to the retopologized mesh. Just go like a couple 100,000. Then you do that projection first. Make sure that kind of works, and also with the morph brush, and then increase and so forth, and so you sort of build it up. I think that's yeah. You should get what I'm saying. If you've tried the morph brush like we did last time, so you store a morph target, use a morph brush, and then do a gradual kind of projection. If you are experiencing some errors. Also, sometimes you just have to go over and kind of smooth out errors, some spikes that could happen, for instance, and then you could just go to the smooth stronger brush. So it's not necessarily an automatic process. Sometimes you do have to go over and get rid of some errors. But essentially, we should be able to arrive at something where we have all the final detail baked, or not yet baked, sorry, projected down to this version, which now has UVs, and it has the updated topology. Alright, so then the same thing we did last time would be to export a normal map. I can use a multi-map exporter. Yeah, we can shop it. So I'll go to the highest subdivision level again. So we'll go C plugin, multi-map exporter, normal map. I'm going to do a 4K map, flip vertically on export, go under the normal map settings, do a tangent space normal map, and I'm going to smooth the low res normals. Okay. And then create all maps. And I already did it, of course. But you can try to bake again.
Are you doing that from the UV one?
Yes. Because this bakes the information down to the UVs. So we do need the one that now has UVs. We go to the C plugin, multi-map exporter, normal, tangent space normal map, smooth low res normals. I don't want to flip B. Let's see. Here. Then create all maps, and you should be in the highest subdivision level at the retopologized mesh with UVs. Well, those are separate subtools currently. They're separate objects. Not for the bake. So for the bake, you only want that specific mesh. Alright, and so on export, you could sample it from Maya and just export it. Oh, yeah. Alright, so good. If you manage to get a normal map, it should look something like that. Okay, those colors are a bit off, but so let's try to attach this. If you open Maya, so you import the low-res mesh with the same UVs, obviously. We're going to try to just put it in Maya. I just added a blend go to bump mapping. Then we'll create a file node. So here on the bump node. Right, so let's open the Hypershade. Hypershade. Under rendering editors, Hypershade. This is the blend I just created. And here I can go graph input connections. There I can see everything that's going into this material. Right? So currently when I just click bump map, you see something going into an attribute called normal camera. This is my material. This is the bump node. This node needs to be changed from bump to tangent space normals. Yeah, actually what I did first, I just went to this material and then clicked here inside of the blend on the bump mapping attribute. That will generate for you this. And then if I select the blend here in the Hypershade and click graph input connections, it will show me everything that's going into the material. In this case, it's only this. So it's a bump node. Into the bump node, there's a file node. And then on the file node, yes, problems? Alright, so then on the file node, navigate to the file, the normal map, then change this from sRGB to RAW. sRGB to RAW on the file node. Then, if you press number 6 in the viewport, the normal map should display. So what you're looking at there, this is my low res, that's the normal map applied. And that's all that we're trying to do. This is it. Now we have the low res version with a normal map, and this is what we're going to be literally able to export to Sketchfab like this. And here I can toggle on and off the normal map, 5 and 6. This is all with random, crazy, automatic UVs. So you see, I can still make it work, right? It's just technically less than optimal because I have a bunch of seams here everywhere. I'm sorry?
What did you do in Hypershade?
Yeah, okay. So the first thing I do, right click, okay, and then go to material attributes.
Yeah,
and then you find the bump mapping. Yep, material attributes. That will open up the material you have in the attribute editor.
Yeah.
Then you find something called bump mapping. And you click there to add something. And then you select file to do the file node. And then, for you to be less confused, you then select that material here in the Hypershade and show input connections. That will show you that you have this node, which is a bump node, and you have a file node going into the bump node.
Okay, yeah.
Okay?
Change the bump to
tangent space normals.
yes.
Yeah, and on the file node, you navigate to the file, but then you also need to change the color space. So from sRGB, you can just set this to raw. And I also turn off the filter. You don't need that. There we go. And then we have achieved what we wanted to do. It's okay, the UVs are less than optimal, the topology is less than optimal, but we did it. Okay, that's what I want to get across. This would be okay for a delivery. You would not, of course, you wouldn't fail if the UVs were less. It's fine, you know. But I would encourage you, of course, to spend the time making the UVs a bit better. You know, using Hedis or experimenting with the ZBrush or whatever. But I would definitely not hesitate to get to this stage. Whatever you need to do, just do some automatic mapping, whatever, just to try it. So we need to all get to that stage, and tomorrow we will do the upload to Sketchfab and make a report based on this, right?
I don't understand. I'm so confused. Did you do the breakdown go back to my hand?
Oh, one more thing you need to do.
Did you just take it to my hand?
One more thing. You select the object and then go to Mesh Display. And we want to set this to Soften Edge. This will just soften the normals, right? At least a bit rewarding, so that we're seeing this is of course the whole point, so that now we can use this in production. So this could be rigged and animated and used for something, and we actually have a higher detail, right? That's all we're doing. So yeah, so I'll walk around and answer some questions, but kind of it for today. And then tomorrow 11 o'clock again, we will then export this to Sketchfab, and we'll just make that final report using the PSD template that I provided for this model, right, or your model. So we'll do that tomorrow. Okay, cool.